Hi, I am Camille Mc Millan Rambharat, and I would like to welcome you to Canboulay Training and Development podcast, Work Shouldn't Hurt. I would love to introduce you to my guest of our podcast, Karen, and we would discuss Pink Shirt Day. We are just 2 days away from Pink Shirt Day, and that's going to be our topic today. Welcome, Karen.
I'm Karen Tsang, and I am on the District Parents Advisory Council for Vancouver School Board, which means that I'm not an employee of the school board. I'm actually a volunteer with the parents group at the district level. So every school has a PAC, and then representatives from PAC go to the district PAC, DPAC, which is what I'm an officer of.
Okay. Nice. Welcome. And thank you so very much for joining us so early. So Pink Shirt Day, I would love for us to dive, as you know, this is Work Shouldn't Hurt because of the experiences Canboulay, myself, and our team had with workplace bullying and harassment. And you and another very good friend of ours have been with me through this journey from the beginning. You're part of my sanity team. And I would like for you to share, what does bullying, because I know it can come from parents as well. And so why don't you just take it from here and share the who, what, why about of Pink Shirt Day? What is the board doing and parents, and how could we make it different and better so the schoolyard bullies just get it and they don't have to go into the workforce?
Right. So I think it's really interesting. Work shouldn't hurt, and one of the places where bullying is experienced to a high degree is at schools, which pretty much every child has to go through the school system to come out the other end, to go into universities, and then to go into the workforce, or just to come out the other end and go into the workforce. Children can be bullied from all different directions, and schools, let's call schools the workplace of children, because it is where children do work. And learn and grow, like we all grow until we're not breathing anymore, right?
Yeah.
And children can be bullied, first of all, by their parents if they're unlucky and they have a parent that is unwell, which kind of primes them to be a child who is a target of schools and of teachers and students.
Interesting.
So that's my take on it as someone who absolutely had that experience to a terrifying degree in my childhood. So I like the idea that workplaces shouldn't hurt, and first and foremost, schools should not cause harm. Pink Shirt Day is an interesting thing that in my own family is not especially celebrated, in part because the people who uphold Pink Shirt Day have a lot of issues around forcing people to conform. And Pink Shirt Day can be seen by kids as being a forced conformity tool. So everyone, is pressured to wear a pink shirt, as opposed to having very real conversations around what is bullying.
Okay.
And I am all for the concept.
Okay.
But at schools, sometimes it's not backed up by action.
Okay. And you and I have spoken about that, the action part, but I just want to back up a bit about what you said about being forced into wearing the pink shirt. So for me, did I purchase it? I think I did, or maybe the company did. I think they purchased it for us. And of course, we had to do the whole performative thing, take the group shots and everything. That did not feel right to me.
Yeah.
And I never wore a pink shirt ever again, because it was more, for me, it was more about the meaning behind what is pink shirt as Canboulay. That's the reason why Canboulay launched on Pink Shirts Day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was just perfect. We recently celebrated our 1 year. So that's interesting that you brought it up about being in school and being forced into wearing pink on that day.
And partly by forced assimilation, right? By the pressure of teachers, and then it becomes a pressure of peers. And I am all for these days and marking them and rebuilding them in authentic ways. So I love that you launched on that day. In a sense, it's a rebellion against the performative nature of it, and in a belief that we can actually do anti-bullying.
Yeah.
Right? We can succeed at teaching people about bullying, about what it really is, which is a demand for people to conform to what we are doing in this organization, whatever that organization is. And if you don't do it, then you're not a part of us. As opposed to understanding that we all come in with strengths and weaknesses, and together we're stronger. And as Sadie Keene likes to say, we lift as we climb.
Yeah.
Right? Echoing others before her. And so I love that you launched on that day. I love that you celebrate it. And I also think that we could do better than just pink shirts. Pink shirts, and the reason behind pink, the idea of pink shirts was excellent. But then, corporate Canada climbed aboard and made it something that doesn't necessarily reflect what it's meant to be.
The message is being lost in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is really dangerous. So where do you see Pink Shirt Day? So in the future, what would you like next year's or the years to come Pink Shirt Day should really look like? I know you don't want people all dressed in pink shirts, but
no, it's not that I don't want them dressed in pink shirts. I want more than pink shirts.
Yeah.
I want for it to be said, hey, if you want to wear a pink shirt today, wear your best pink shirt. And if you don't, then come in whatever you love and be your true self. Yeah. So me, for example, color is very much tied into the bullying of my childhood, because I had someone who was hyper-focused on me, a peer who was hyper-focused on me, and any day I showed up in anything, that person would repeat, purple shoes, purple shoes, purple shoes. You're wearing purple shoes. And so color is actually intensely personal to me in terms of I generally tend to dress in black. I'm very comfortable in it. It doesn't stand out. I have a larger than life personality, so it works for me, right?
Yeah.
And if I had to go to school in a pink shirt, I would die for that whole day. It would be too much for me, if I had to go to work, so I would want to see that deep understanding of what it looks like to be forced to assimilate and the rejection of that by saying, if you feel like wearing a pink shirt, wear a pink shirt, because we're celebrating this day. If you don't wear pink, come in something that you love, and we'll all celebrate you in that and why you're in that. And we'll talk about what it means to not have to assimilate.
Yeah. And you can also be part of that corporate selfie group, everyone in pink, right? Because,
absolutely.
If you and I showed up because we love pink, so if we decided to be in whatever, then we would still be included in that group photo that they post on their website.
Because that is the very essence of being able to be yourself, and that is anti-bullying.
Yeah.
Right? The very essence of true anti-bullying is meeting people where they're at and helping them if they're stuck in a place. And I'm not stuck in a place of not wearing a pink shirt. I don't want to wear a pink shirt.
Yeah.
Right? But maybe I'm stuck in a place where I'm angry everybody else is wearing a pink shirt. Yeah. And maybe I need a bit of help with that. Right? Wow. Or maybe someone else needs everybody to do exactly what they're doing. And so they need help in that area.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So meeting people where they're at is much more magical than everybody having to don a pink shirt and feel awkward or feel excluded because they don't.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I want to take you back to, if I may, how, because you spoke about bullying starting from the home because
Mm-hmm.
a parent or parents weren't well.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we are older, we understand so many things, right? Looking back. So you would have had to deal with whatever's going on, kids dealing with stuff at home and having to go to school and have to go through that. Like how many years did that last, and how did you, I don't think you, I know for me, you don't ever get past it, but how do you cope? What suggestions, what advice would you give to teachers, anyone who's listening, um, about the harm being done to children? And as you said, everyone is coming from a different place, different backgrounds, right? And we can't treat every child the same.
Right. So so I'm someone who exists on the neurodiverse kind of spectrum or galaxy of people, which means that which means that actually there's a new term for it. It's advanced learner needs. It means that I am someone who is either exceptionally good at something or exceptionally bad at it, and that's my neurodiversity. So here's an example of how that manifests physically. I can carry a baby or books on my left side, but not my right side. I can write with my right hand and do things like use chopsticks or whatever. And where my husband can fumble along with chopsticks in his left hand, he can't actually, or I can't actually do that. So I can't pick food up with my left hand with a fork, with chopsticks, because I don't have fine motor skills on my left side. And I don't have great gross motor skills on my right side. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I entered school fully able to read my mom's magazines. And when I went to school and we did circle, and the teacher was asking us what we were excited about in kindergarten, and I have two older siblings, so I know what they got in school. I said, I cannot wait to go to the library and take out all the books and read them because I am out of material. And she said to me, kindergarten children do not read, they learn the alphabet. And now is the first moment of a new adult showing me that I was wrong, rather than meeting me where I was at, which was I didn't need to learn the alphabet, I could read, right? And so what happened to me was I went through school with very messy handwriting, very happy side by side playing with kids, but not really ready to, like, socio-emotionally, not ready to interact with kids. I needed more time to be around kids and figure out how I would do that. But instead, teachers became obsessed with my faults that meant I couldn't assimilate. So by the time I was in grade 4, I was pretty angry at teachers, but I was also awkward because I had learned how to pass in society as a neurotypical person, but I wasn't very good at it. So that meant that kids could see that I was awkward. And the kid who focused on me for 6 years. It was a really long time. And adults watched, and it was vicious, and it was constant, it was pervasive. But because my mom at home was not well and was not able to hear me at home and basically villainized me as well, when I went to school and adults weren't on my side, they were also not able to see that the bullying wasn't my fault, right? And so I think where bullying in schools creates the systems that we exist in outside, it's again that once people decide that someone who's being bullied is a victim as opposed to a target, and they don't help mediate the situation in a way that hears everybody, we're hooped, right? We're hooped because we are taught we're a victim then as well. And
Yeah.
there's no getting out of that
And
without some real intervention somewhere that builds up your skills and your understanding of the value of yourself as a person.
mhm,
And then the school system replicates it, right? Because who becomes a teacher? Often, and not always, the people who become teachers succeeded at school.
right.
You know, a few of them become teachers because they didn't like what was happening, but pretty soon they have to assimilate to the system to get through. So they might be a good teacher for individual kids, but they're still assimilated into a system,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of teachers don't have that lived experience of being targeted or of being misunderstood.
Yeah. So
Does that
many.
make
Oh
any
yeah.
sense?
You have my brain like really turning here because so many things. It takes me back to Jenny, who at an early age in elementary school, so first day of being in kindergarten, we got a phone call saying she's just too smart to be in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
We need to put in a blended class. And being from the Caribbean, what's a blended class? So she went up, right? Well, you know what it is. So higher level. So she was in grade 1 and 2. She had a really awesome teacher who pushed her. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
pushed her, but supported her curiosity. And she would always say, "Oh my God, Janae can read." Like she refused to sound words out to be with the
Yeah.
other. And Jenny would just read. So she was always advanced.
Yeah.
Got to grade 3, had a teacher who felt Jenny needed to back with the the rest of the class, which really affected Jenny. That it's not until much later we realize it, right? She pushed on through, but to have to go through and being a child of color,
Yeah.
you know, it's even harder for her, right? So being
Absolutely.
told, she's immigrant, she's female, she's black, all these things, in hindsight, you realize how the system was really against her. And she had to fight like so hard to prove herself. I had to go into school to say, there was this one teacher by grade 3. Jenny was just not doing homework. Her handwriting was changing, so many things. So I did go into school. And all the parents who were in front of me had like about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes with the teacher on parent day. I got there and I said, "I'm Janae's mom, da 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 da." And the teacher was like, "You have any questions for me?" So I said, "Well, I'm really concerned. Janae's an A student and now being in this class, her handwriting, there isn't any homework. She seems to be messy." And she said, "Yeah, if she doesn't want to do anything, I just leave her to do whatever she wants. Anything else?" And I was like, no, no. I left and I took Janae out of that school and took her to another school, right? Because I was not in the mood to fight that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that part of your journey really brought me back to Janae's story.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge that you did fight, because when you take your child out of a situation that you don't have an answer for how to address it, but you can see that it's oppressive, when you remove them, that is the fight. It may be the path of least resistance in a sense, but you took your child out of an abusive situation. You recognized it and you removed your child. And I don't think that parents understand the importance of doing something. And really the thing that I identify with for myself is that my parents did not have the wherewithal. For whatever reason, they did not have the wherewithal to remove me from situations that were causing me extreme harm, like harm that still affects me today. So interestingly, this past Thursday, we at DPAC held an event because Vancouver School Board is canceling a program in a really sneaky way. So they're parsing their words and calling it a revisioning. But it's a program for students that would be like I've met Janelle, so I'm quite sure that she also is what has been called gifted. And gifted can be gifted alone, but generally gifted comes with deficits. You have some strengths, and then you have some things that you have to work on developing. So gifted, I've always called it gifted learning disabled. It's newly being coined as advanced learner needs, and I just have to think about what I'm saying here. Gifted learning disabled kids have a program in Vancouver School Board and in other programs called, or in other school districts called MAC. And it's a multi-age cluster classroom. And like your experience of her split class, where she could work at her own pace, but better, this program is meant to meet kids who are probably working at 2 or 3 grade levels ahead, right, and capable of that work, but also maybe have socio-emotional needs, like they are not connecting with their classmates.
Yeah.
So that's a grade 4 to 7 program in the school system that has been very successful. But for some reason, our school board has set their sights on canceling it. We think maybe because that would force people into private education, which is a whole different conversation.
Okay.
But I'm mindful of the fact that, it is possible to meet kids where they're at and to put them with other kids who also need to develop socio-emotionally, to treat each other and others not with disdain because they're not keeping up. Because when you're stuck in a classroom where you can't work to your full capacity, and maybe you're being told to coach somebody else in math because you're good at it, as opposed to being able to learn yourself, right? When those classrooms are available, there is less bullying because kids' needs are being met, and the other kids aren't feeling like there's these kids that are so smart, right?
Yeah.
That whole gifted term is such a curse because, what do you do with that as compared to just understanding that it's differently developing?
Yeah, I like that. And I know so I'm looking at the time, like we can go on and on and on. How could we, do you believe that kids, I don't think I believe it just yet, but I'm working on it. Do you believe that kids who were bullied in schools or were bullied go into the workplace? I know some people have been reading about it. I don't think so.
Do you mean, do they become bullies in the workplace?
Yeah.
So I think that's I think that's a super simplistic concept. And not all kids who are abused become abusers.
Exactly.
Adults or children grow up to be adults who can make a choice. They can make a choice to heal from the trauma they experience themselves and the intergenerational trauma that they carry with them from the events of history.
Yeah.
Right? The things that are marked on our DNA that we have to sort of, I like to say to my kids sometimes if they're feeling sad or upset and they don't have a reason, that those are the times when you hold your DNA in your hands and you warm it up and you kind of don't worry about why you feel sad. You just let yourself feel sad until you feel better and you rest and you care for yourself as best you can. We can't always do that.
Acknowledge it. So I to people, acknowledge that feeling and don't just push it aside.
Yeah. So, but to get back to your question specifically, because I have an answer for this. I did not finish university because I really struggle with conforming into a teacher's idea of how to write a paper or how to understand the material that they're presenting. So that means that I haven't necessarily climbed any corporate ladders. But when I was working and, moving up in, for example, a magazine I worked at through experience, I had a boss that was not nice. And I didn't like some of the things she did. And at a certain point, I called her out in a very loud, public way that got her fired. And she wasn't the first person that I got angry and used my powers of being able to say things succinctly when I'm angry in a very public way to cause them harm. So, and I didn't intentionally get her fired, but
Yeah.
that was the outcome, right? As opposed to working with her and being honest with her. And I think that there was an edge of bullying that was happening out of me. So I think in a way I was using my powers to push someone who I didn't care for or didn't like their way. And I decided with that one that I never wanted to do that again. Right? So I don't believe that people who are bullied grow up to be bullies. Everything I do in my life is looking for ways to address the systemic bullying that happens and to talk about it, but without going after an individual who I think is causing harm. I think sometimes people who weren't bullied become very, very strong bullies because someone is threatening their idea of who they are and they don't like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to be bullied. I think actually a lot of people who were bullied grow up to not be bullies.
Yeah, and like I said, for me, like I've been reading and hearing people, and I don't buy it because, as you said, you could have gone through so many traumas when you were younger, and you know how that feels, and you.
That's it. And I actually thought about this morning. I wanted to point out something that's happening this week in the world, and the response from a group who has been systemically bullied for generations. So, so the way that Russia has attacked the Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And if you notice in social media, if you have any connections to Indigenous people in Canada, you will see that they are posting Ukrainian scarves. And that's because Ukrainians and Indigenous people in places where Ukrainians settled in Canada developed relationships, especially in harder times where they pulled together. And so scarves were given as gifts, and they became what's called a kokum scarf, which means a grandmother's scarf. And it's, you see the old ladies with the, you see the babushkas with the, and kokums, grandmothers in parts of what's known as Canada, wear those scarves and keep them. And you're seeing them post them, and you're seeing them have empathy for Ukrainians, both in Canada and outside of Canada. And there are Ukrainians who uphold white supremacy and who have not been good allies to Indigenous people. But that is not what the Indigenous people are bringing out at this time.
Yeah.
The Indigenous people are very publicly saying, we stand with the people of Ukraine. Why do they do that? Because they know what it's like to be invaded. They know what it's like to be pushed off their land. They know what it's like to be violently attacked. And there's something beautiful about that connection, of their connection and their ability to not mistake, the oppression of some people with a whole group of people. And so I see that as the extreme of anti-bullying. Right?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're awesome, Karen.
Thank you.
You are, and I've said that so many times. I can't wait for you and our mutual friend to be back on. I would love to wish you all the best, and I know you and I and so many others are healing from so many childhood traumas and current issues. I am so privileged to have you as part of my healing team. No, I'm not going to cry. I remember the day that I met you, where we were, how it was, and to know going on 3 years later as I continue my fight against my bully and her supporters, it is great that you are here to celebrate Canboulay's 1 year anniversary, and I hope
Yes.
you around for many more.
I want to congratulate you on your 1 year of
Thank you.
awesome content and thoughts, and the way that you push back against the systems that cause people harm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Refuse,
congratulations.
and refuse to acknowledge it. Like, you can whole other podcast, right? But I keep saying, like, acknowledge it, right? But if you keep saying it didn't happen, then here we are.
Absolutely. That is, I would say that is at the core of what we deal with at school board, is the refusal to acknowledge the things that aren't working and the harms that are caused, the refusal to acknowledge and to address and to change so that those harms aren't caused again and again and again.
Exactly. So, what is one thing you would love to get out there, for anything you would love to share with our audience going into the week? Anything. It's our guests have anything. It must be positive, whether it's
I,
personal, whether it's general, that you would love to share.
I do have one. When my first child was little, I found myself parenting in a similar way to my mom. And I didn't like that because my childhood was quite adversarial. And so I took a parenting class. And when my child would be screaming at me, because that's what a 3-year-old sometimes does when they're frustrated.
Yeah.
And if I got locked into a conflict with her, at some point, I would stop and I would think, wow, she looks really miserable. And I would look at her and I would say, you look like you need a hug. Do you need a hug?
Mhm.
And she would go, I remember the first time, and her face just broke, and she was like, yeah. And so we had a hug, and, we could come back around to the issue. And sometimes we didn't even have to, because there was really nothing but frustration. So I think that if I was to leave people with something, when they're in the middle of a conflict, the thing I learned in the parenting class is that there's a certain point, they call it emotional mountain. And there's a certain point where where the person who is upset cannot reason when they hit a certain point on the mountain, and they have to go all the way up and they have to come down. And if you're engaging them as they go up, they're just going to get more and more upset. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if you can extricate yourself from conflict and say, okay, we're in emotion now. We're not in problem solving mode. So let's be in emotion. Wow, you look really upset. What's going on for you? Right? And we can come back around to the thing that we are trying to figure out. But right now we can't solve that because we're in emotions. And I think there's magic in understanding that we don't have to sort things out when we're really upset.
Yeah. Sounds kind of like my bully, who was just like way over the top, and I was being like, but that's a really good, make me feel like I need to take a parenting class for my 20-something-year-olds. But
it's great. It's really great. Like, I still use all of that, and I use it everywhere. And I'm glad to be reminded of it today, because this week I'm going to look at things that I'm involved in and where I could apply that logic of stepping out of course, when you're the target, you don't have the same luxury. So what you did when you were in your situation, when it was at its height and there was, everything was on that mountain, you got yourself away from the situation, and that was the right choice. Right? And so if there is a person who is stuck on the other side of that, who's being attacked, as opposed to me in the position of power as a parent, right? I could stop myself. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I'm encouraging us, when we're in that position of power, because we all have both, when we're in that position of power, to slow ourselves down and just go, this is not working for us right now, right? Like, this is not working for us. So how about we just take a moment and get a tea or have a hug, or, if we don't want to touch each other, then go to our corners and just, do whatever we need to center ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Karen. And
I love talking to you, Camille.
I love, you'll be back. You'll be back, like so many. And you have to be a guest writer for Canboulay newsletter as well. We have we are starting to prepare for our next quarter, so that will be exciting. Look out for Karen at Canboulay newsletter. And thank you all for joining us. Send us your questions. Check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, our website, www.canboulay.ca. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.